Hello, welcome to Recap Rhapsody. Today, I'd like to show you a brilliant mystery thriller film, Rear Window, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, released in 1954. With 8.5/10 IMDb rating, no doubt about the excellence of this movie. And now, we'll find out how great this movie in 10 minutes. The movie follows L.B. Jefferies, a professional photographer, stuck in a wheelchair after an accident in his apartment. He becomes convinced one of his neighbor, Lars Thorwald, has committed murder, although no specific evidence to prove this. If you want to watch the full movie, please rent or purchase it on Amazon Instant Video, iTunes, Google Play, and Vudu. And warning, spoiler, please consider before viewing. Recuperating from a broken leg caused by an accident that happened during his work, professional photographer L.B. Jefferies is confined to a wheelchair in his apartment in Greenwich Village, Manhattan. He's in a full leg cast that's definitely cramping his style. He spends his days looking out of his apartment window and observing the lives of his neighbors. Jeff is visited regularly by his socialite girlfriend, Lisa Fremont, and a nurse named Stella. Lisa is a beautiful model and a fashion editor. The only thing Jeff finds worse than being trapped in his wheelchair is being trapped by Lisa's attention. Lisa is gorgeous, smart, nurturing, financially independent, and she can't keep her hands off of him. It's a hot summer, and the neighbors in the courtyard behind his place open up their windows. For a guy on intimate terms with a long-range lens and a penchant for putting his nose into interesting situations, this is like throwing chuck steak in front of a wolf. So, he starts watching his neighbors through his rear window. Because of the intense heat wave, his neighbors have to keep their windows open to stay cool. They are a lonely woman, whom Jeff nicknames Miss Lonely Hearts, a newlywed couple, a pianist, a pretty dancer nicknamed Miss Torso, a middle-aged couple whose small dog likes digging in the flower garden, and Lars Thorwald, a traveling costume jewelry salesman who is married to an irritable woman who spends most of her time sick in bed. One night, after an argument with Lisa, Jeff is alone in his apartment and hears a woman scream, "Don't," and the sound of breaking glass. Later that night, during a thunderstorm, he observes Thorwald making repeated late-night trips, carrying a suitcase. Round these parts, we call that suspicious. Could Thorwald have murdered his wife? The next morning, Jeff notices that Thorwald's wife is gone and sees him cleaning a large knife and handsaw. And Thorwald also has moving men haul away a large trunk. Jeff becomes convinced that Thorwald has murdered his wife. He starts spying on Thorwald, getting more obsessive by the moment. He shares this with Lisa and Stella, who believe him when they observe Thorwald acting suspiciously. Jeff calls his friend and war buddy, Tom Doyle, a New York City police detective, and asks him to investigate Thorwald. Doyle isn't impressed by the evidence and doesn't approve of Jeff's amateur sleuthing. But details keep piling up that prove impossible for Jeff to ignore. Doyle finds nothing suspicious. Apparently, Mrs. Thorwald is upstate. Soon after, the neighbor's dog is found strangled to death after digging in a flower bed. The distraught owner yells, and everyone runs to their windows except Thorwald, who sits quietly in his dark apartment, smoking a cigar. He doesn't seem surprised by it. Why didn't Thorwald pretend to surprised, like everyone else, to avoid suspicion? That's the point. Hitchcock wants us to notice, but in this case, Thorwald is not much clever. After that, Jeff and Lisa send Thorwald a note accusing him of murder so they can watch his reaction when he reads it. The trick works so well that Jeff ups the ante by calling Thorwald and telling him that he'll go to the police if he doesn't meet him in a nearby bar. He believes Thorwald buried something in the flower bed and killed the dog because it was digging there. The minute Thorwald leaves, Lisa and Stella dig up the flowers but find nothing. Much to Jeff's amazement and admiration, Lisa climbs up the fire escape to Thorwald's apartment and clambers in through an open window. Jeff and Stella get distracted when they see Miss Lonely Hearts take out some pills and write a note, realizing she is going to attempt suicide. They call the police, but before they can report it, Miss Lonely Hearts stops, opening the window to listen to the pianist's music. Thorwald returns and confronts Lisa, and Jeff realizes that Thorwald is going to kill her. He calls the police and reports an assault in progress. The police arrive and arrest Lisa when Thorwald indicates that she broke in to his apartment. Jeff sees Lisa coyly pointing to her finger with Mrs. Thorwald's wedding ring on it. Thorwald sees this also and, realizing that she is signaling someone, spots Jeff across the courtyard. Jeff phones Doyle and leaves an urgent message while Stella goes to bail Lisa out of jail. When his phone rings, Jeff assumes it is Doyle and blurts out that the suspect has left. When no one answers, he realizes that it was Thorwald calling. Thorwald enters Jeff's dark apartment, and Jeff sets off a series of camera flashbulbs to temporarily blind him. Thorwald pushes Jeff out the window, and Jeff, hanging on, yells for help. Police enter the apartment. Jeff falls, and officers on the ground break his fall. After that, Thorwald confesses to the police he murdered his wife. A few days later, normalcy returns to the neighborhood. The couple, whose dog was killed, have a new puppy. The newlyweds are having their first argument. Miss Dorso's boyfriend comes back from the army. Miss Lonely Hearts starts seeing the pianist, and Thorwald's apartment is being refurbished. Jeff rests in his wheelchair, now with casts on both legs. Beside him, Lisa reads a book titled Beyond the High Himalayas. After seeing Jeff is sleeping, Lisa happily opens a fashion magazine. Rear Window is closer to the mystery side than the thriller side. Did Thorwald murder his wife? Jeff has suspicions, but he doesn't know for sure. That's a mystery in its purest form. Just because he's pretty sure he knows who did it doesn't mean he's right. Even in his most sinister films, Hitchcock injects some comedy. Rear Window is no exception. Most of that comes in the dialogue, which has some pricelessly witty lines, much of them courtesy of Stella. Overall, Rear Window is a masterful piece of filmmaking that has stood the test of time. The movie is a perfect example of how to create tension and suspense in a story, and how to use camera techniques and editing to create a sense of danger and claustrophobia. The characters are well drawn and memorable, and the movie explores interesting themes about voyeurism, curiosity, and the power of observation. If you haven't seen Rear Window, you are missing out on one of the greatest thrillers ever made. Video is over now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.